when you paint, you eliminate the middle person. When you paint, you put the paint on the canvas and there's your picture. When you compose, and then, unless you're playing it yourself, which I do sometimes, you give it to another person or another ensemble, and then they have to interpret what you've done. Now, if a composer is really, really meticulous about their notation, theoretically, there shouldn't be a huge gap between what the performers do and what's in a composer's head. But even the most detailed and meticulous notation still has room for confusion sometimes, or interpretation. I am always interested in the performer's interpretation. I am always interested in what a performer or a group of performers brings to my piece. Sort of slowly swirling up, and I thought, oh, that is so musical to me. I'm going to write a piece that's a depiction of that slow swirl of the cream up through the coffee. And so that's what inspires the opening of the piece, which starts sort of middle register and gradually spirals upward so that all the instruments, even the cello, are playing absolutely as high as they can. The cello and the viola are playing harmonics at the end of that passage. There are several challenges with this piece. One is that the end of it has many, many silences that gradually get longer and longer, which is something that's typical of my music. And when you're performing a piece that has lots of silences and space, it can be very disconcerting when you're on stage, having to count out these rests and wondering, well, what does everyone expect me to do while I'm not playing? And the lengths of the silences feel much more dramatic and much more, you feel much more self-conscious in them when you're on stage playing them than the audience is aware of. The audience is usually not aware of the time passing nearly as deeply as the performers are. My music in general is very quiet and very introspective, and there's a passage in the piece that's extremely loud and almost even violent. And for people who know my music, when this passage comes up, it's actually shocking, and it's hard to be shocking, and I wasn't trying to be shocking, but every time this piece has been performed, people come up to me and say, wow, that was really shocking, that part where it got loud. I'm always deciding on instrumentations based on instrumental color, which is one of the reasons why I like brass quintets so much, because there's a certain homogeneity of color with a brass quintet, but then there are certain subtleties that go along with that. So I like the sort of the dual aspect of that. I often write pieces for instrument ensembles made up of like instruments. Like I have a bassoon quartet, a piece for 4 bassoons. That I'm now writing a trombone trio. So. Fortunately, I've never actually been naked in front of a group of people. However, having my music played in front of a group of people makes me feel that way sometimes. I feel very exposed, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. But the bottom line is it's incredibly exciting to hear what you've slaved over for sometimes as long as a year, realized by musicians, and then brought to life and performed in a public setting.